Hello and welcome to Antinatalism this week. A panel discussion is going to happen in the coming week and it is going to be on the core subject in the world of antinatalism, which is how to define antinatalism. Not only is the subject exciting, but the panel is full of celebrities. Well, antinatalist celebrities. We'll be having David Benatar, and I don't need to introduce this name to you, but just in case if you're joining newly, David Benatar is the author of Better Never to Have Been, The Harm of Coming Into Existence, and also many other antinatalist and philosophy books. Another David Pierce, will also be on the panel. He is a soft antinatalist in that he agrees with antinatalism in principle, but thinks that since people are going to reproduce anyway, it is better to work on eliminating suffering instead. So he is an antinatalist and a transhumanist philosopher, and has also written a book called The Hedonistic Imperative and has co-authored Can Biotechnology Abolish Suffering? Karim Akirma, who is a well-known antinatalist philosopher and also has written Antinatalism Handbook, which was originally written in German, will also be on the panel. Amanda Suknik is the founder of the Exploring Antinatalism podcast and has been producing antinatalist content for well over 15 years, at least as far as I can remember. She is also a full-time antinatalist and a comprehensive archiver of antinatalist content, and she will also be on the panel. Then we have Lawrence Anton, who has taken antinatalist content production to a whole new level with his ever-growing YouTube channel, and also with his antinatalist advocacy organization. He would also be on the panel. Mati Hairi has been writing about antinatalism for well over 2 decades, and recently he published a book, Antinatalism, Extinction, and the End of Procreative Self-Corruption, along with Amanda. He would be moderating the panel. The event is produced by Amanda, Mati, and Lawrence, and it is going to be recorded on 15th of August, and is going to be out soon after that on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast channel. The discussion is going to be over the definition of antinatalism. So of course, every panelist will bring their own shade to the palette, but you can also share your own definition through this Google form. I will include the link of this form in the description. Now, of course, there's a time limit that they have for this panel discussion, so there is no guarantee that each of those responses should be covered, but I hope at least some of them would be covered. They would also be discussing the definition of antinatalism as it is presented in the Cambridge Dictionary. So a star-studded panel discussing arguably the most controversial topic of defining antinatalism, and I couldn't be more excited for this. To top it all, this is going to happen on 15th of August, which is a holiday in India because it is Independence Day, much like 4th of July for United States. So I have nothing to complain. Should we go extinct? A philosophical dilemma of our unbearable times is the title of a new book by Todd May, which was published this week on 6th of August, which coincidentally is the same day on which in 1945 a nuclear bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. So it's a very bad coincidence, and I hope it is not by design. This book will also be the subject of the reading group organized by Emil P. Torres, who themselves have written a comprehensive book on human extinction. The event will be on 16th of August at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and if you want to join the Zoom call for the reading group, you can email to philosophytorres@gmail.com. A new academic course in the University of Turin in Italy has been designed with the central focus on antinatalism and David Benatar. The course is part of master's degree in philosophy, and the University of Turin in Italy, where this course would be taught, is one of the oldest universities in Europe. It will be taught by Luca Sapio, and we have covered his paper on antinatalism in one of the past episodes of Antinatalism this week. If you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description. It's a 6-week long course, of which 2 whole weeks would be given to Benatar's argument for antinatalism. 1 full week for the axiological asymmetry and another one for the quality of life argument. Other perspectives, including those of Mati Hairi and Amanda Suknik, are also covered. In my knowledge, this is the first proper academic course at a proper university on antinatalism, so I'm extremely thrilled to see this. Nimrod is in his 2nd week of his German tour of antinatalism. Here we see photos of his first week in various German cities. On 11th of August, he would be in Heidelberg, and rest of the schedule you can see on the screen, where he would be going to different German cities before ending the tour on 18th in Berlin. Links to all of his events of all of his days would be in the description. Mark J. Maharaj was interviewed on a channel called Center for Inquiry Canada, where he talked about many aspects of antinatalism. Mark explained David Benatar's asymmetry along with the premises on which it is based. One point I liked about it was that he called it a value asymmetry rather than axiological asymmetry, which makes more sense when we are talking about it in a non-academic setting. He went through philanthropic and misanthropic arguments and also on the way explained the difference between ethics and morality. There was also a discussion on different aspects about death, different views about death, whether death can be seen as a harm to the one who is dying or the one who is dead, or it can just be a neutral thing, or in fact, can it be a good thing for the one who is dying or the one who is dead? They also touched upon a little bit on the right to die and then moved on to extinction and discussed various aspects of extinction in relation to antinatalism. Reproductive rights versus coercion were also discussed, and then they moved on to pro-natalism, which spilled over into the topics of population ethics and demographics. Finally, the juicy question of whether antinatalism is only for humans or can it be applied to other animals too. I would actually like to make a reaction video to the whole thing, but I'm short on time, so I'm just going to provide my opinion on this particular last piece. Mark was asked a question whether antinatalism also applies to other animals, and here's what he had to say.
And so here's my position, is that with the definition, it stipulates that it's an ethical position. And I think ethical prescriptions only apply to moral agents. So the responsibility, or the ethical responsibility, would be on moral patients creating moral agents creating moral patients or moral subjects or morally relevant entities. So the prescription is solely on humans, not to contribute to bringing other beings into existence. What's happening in a wildlife, I would say, is it's just amoral. It's wild animal suffering is bad, but it's descriptively bad. It's not they're not held morally responsible or ethically responsible as moral agents that can reason, would be held to those things. So there's that division between people who only say that it's just specifically human. Then there are those that apply it to all life, and then there I don't know many people like me in the space, but that only say that this ethical conclusion is a prescriptive to moral agents creating beings into existence. And the example of that would be like breeding dogs or breeding farmed animals, or any situation where we're artificially breeding beings. And I would say that that's the extent to which I'm applying it to other animals. So that's what I mean. Not necessarily what's happening in the wild.
I think if you define antinatalism as an ethical prescription, then what he says makes sense. But if you hold a view that antinatalism is actually a recognition that coming into sentient existence causes harm to the one who is coming into existence, then things change a little bit. Of course, wild animals are not moral agents, but we can still recognize that coming into existence of a wild animal is harmful to that particular wild animal. If viewed this way, then all sentient beings come under the umbrella of antinatalism. Another article on the book What Are Children For by Rachel Weissman and Anastasia Berg came out this week. We have covered quite a few articles on this one in the past episodes of Antinatalism this week, but there was one particular paragraph in this one which I thought I should respond to. Now, the title of the article itself was The Poverty of Secular Pro-Natalism by Leela Mechui. The basic idea was that secular liberals have an intellectual poverty when it comes to justifying pro-natalism. That's why Anastasia and Rachel try to provide some ammunition to these liberals so they can go ahead and have children. Here's that bizarre paragraph. Berg and Weissman's original intervention in the debate goes roughly as follows. A human life is at least partially composed of activities and experiences that don't necessarily end badly or well. These activities, such as enjoying a friendship or engaging in a vocation, don't have ends to which they are ordered. Instead, the end is contained within them at every moment, and therefore they never really reach exhaustion. In other words, we do these activities for their own sake. They take only certain activities and extrapolate them to the entire living experience to prove that this experience of living life is positive in and of itself. It is positive intrinsically. The question is, if this living experience is positive intrinsically, why do we yearn for meaning and purpose for our lives? Secondly, why do we suffer from boredom? If the experience of living was positive in and of itself, the entire experience, then we would never be bored. Why is it the case that once a desire is satisfied, a new one pops up, and most of the time we live in a state where some of the desires are always unsatisfied? How is this intrinsically good? Thirdly, even if we accept that the experience of living life is intrinsically positive, how does it follow from that we should be creating a new one, especially when that potential being is not deprived of those positive experiences? Anyway, the article goes on. The value of a human life can be understood similarly. Berg and Weisman argue that the specific course of a child's life is fundamentally indeterminate from the start, is a core feature of the human condition. Choosing to have a child regardless of this uncertainty is the most basic way to affirm our existence. To affirm that life is worth living, one must decide to have children. I think this common ambiguity about worth living has come up. Choosing to have a child is a way to affirm that life is worth starting. It can easily be the case that a life is not worth starting, but once started, it can become worth continuing. That is because the interests a being has to have in order for her life to become worth living or worth continuing can be acquired only after that life actually has been started. Before starting that life, there were no such interests, and so they play no role in deciding whether a life is worth starting or not. Secondly, to affirm your own notion of whether life is worth living or not, you are using a child as a means, which in and of itself is ethically problematic. Imagine if David Attenborough, not David Benatar, David Attenborough explains the arguments for antinatalism. Well, you don't have to imagine, because there was actually a video this week where David Attenborough explained antinatalism. Of course, the video is just using David Attenborough's voice, using some AI tools, and the channel is very small with not many views, but it was still fun to listen to, so I thought I should share it. Now, in Better Never to Have Been, David Benatar had proposed a view on abortion called the pro-death view. On this view, if you recognize that a fetus does not achieve sentience up until a certain number of weeks of pregnancy, I think he proposed some early 20s, then one is morally obliged to abort if one is pregnant. So firstly, don't get pregnant or impregnate someone, but if you do by accident, then abort before the fetus achieves sentience. A new book about abortion was published this week, a mental health clinician's handbook for abortion care. It covers many different aspects of abortion comprehensively, like history of abortion, biological aspects of abortion, psychological and emotional aspects of abortion, and also sociological aspects of abortion. One particular chapter I would like to highlight from that book is Abortion, Reproductive Justice, and Intersectional Inequity. It talks about the intersection of reproductive justice and various forms of oppression like racism, sexism, cissexism, classism, ableism, and ageism. It also demonstrates how each of those forms present a barrier in accessing abortion care and how they give birth to prejudiced narratives, stereotypes, and stigmas around both reproduction and abortion. This is interesting because as antinatalists, we are mainly dealing with philosophy, but sociological issues are also very important to antinatalism. These were some of the stories I have gone through this week. You might feel two missing pieces. One is that there are so many good videos published every week on antinatalism. For example, Carnism Debunked had a 2-hour-long debate this week with a pregnant vegan lady on antinatalism. I'm not covering those videos because it is not always possible for me to go through each and every video in the same week that it was published for me to report on them. Secondly, there are so many child-free articles and content in general that is coming up which is very hard to keep up with. I'm generally supportive of child-free positions, but with the latest JD Vance's controversy of child-free cat ladies, a lot of articles about child-free and DINK and whatnot have actually digressed into politics. So it sort of forms a distraction from the topic of antinatalism.